Hey there, good to see you guys again. What a day today. Lots of great nuggets that showed up all day long. But one of my favorites, not necessarily for the client or for myself really, but in terms of teachable moments, is the whole concept of triggers. So many people talk about she triggered me, he triggered me, and from a place of being triggered, just want to like get away. Right? Because oftentimes triggers stimulate the sympathetic nervous system and we just want to go into fight or flight or freeze. But a lot of people just want to get away. You know the commercial, ever just want to get away? People want to get away when they get triggered. And so oftentimes what happens is we get triggered, and that's the big T, when we're like in the beginning of when we're triggered, not when we're evolved after time of doing some good work, right? We have what I call the TRR, purposely written just like that. We have a trigger, we have an internal response, we have an external reaction. And there are like a million examples of that. I've had clients who got triggered, they didn't even know what the trigger was per se, right? And next thing you know, they're arrested on the side of a road. Because ultimately when you break it down, lack of safety triggered road rage, triggered an interaction, triggered an arrest. And so the idea is to take this TRR, right, triggers, internal response, external reaction, and move it towards a place of health. So when we're here, we have something called the window of tolerance, sort of that integrative capacity to be a place of good social engagement, innervated by the vagus nerve, the ventral aspect of the vagus nerve. Really important. The goal is to widen that. There's not a lot of wiggle room here. You know, if somebody looks at you the wrong way, you can be like up here, right? If somebody looks at you the wrong way, you could be down here. But you're not in here, necessarily. The goal is to gradually, even though we still don't know what the triggers are, question mark, is to build in some time and space between the internal response and the external reaction. As we do that, we get to widen. That's probably a little generous there. We'll make it just a little wider, and so on and so forth. So we can keep spreading this out, and then we get a little wider. What's interesting is that the goal is never to get rid of it. We have to listen. We're always going to have some triggers. We're going to have an internal reaction. We're going to have an internal response and external reaction. That's what we're just going to. We're humans. We're alive. The goal is maybe make a small T, and when we get really good, when we really understand, when the default is when something happens that you have an immediate sense of knowing. You like, wow, I just pulled my body away. Something's happening. And we can go right into the components I'm going to show you in just a moment that then help change how I externally react. You know, maybe I just say excuse me to somebody else versus rage or something. So when we get really good at this, and I'm abbreviating this because otherwise I could be here for like 2 hours and I don't think anybody wants to listen to me for 2 hours. We actually have a pretty close trigger, internal response, external reaction. But it's from a much different place. It's from a much more integrated place, not from a reactive place. Here, this R really would be really big, right? Really reactive. Something happens and boom. This is, that's curious. Something kind of happened. This is what I'm noticing inside. And then I can have, for lack of a better term, an appropriate reaction, right? When we do that, our window of tolerance is like, it gets bigger and bigger, right? It's probably, when we can be here, it's probably like the whole room. We have lots of room in here to then put together a reasonable reaction to something. You know, I have a common communication would be you can validate whatever's going on for somebody else, you can clarify your own position, you can collectively come up with an action. You can make repairs and breakdown of community. You can do a lot of stuff when we're here, where our social engagement ability and everything is really high. What's interesting is oftentimes when we're in the TRR, we're often potentially engaging with someone else who's in the same place. That's not fun. That's big fireworks potentially, right? So I'm going to just break this down. I'm going to erase this. Because what I want to do is just show this again, because there's actually a third R. So if I were to write it out, I did an article once called Trauma in the Body, and I wrote it sort of like this. There's really now a third R here, which I will go over, right? So the triggers, again, there may be one, there may be two, there may be three. So many people want to focus on what is the trigger. I gotta know what the trigger is. Yeah, sometimes we know. Sometimes we don't know. It's not always that clear. And oftentimes, if this is our reaction, we're already so hijacked from the moment something happens, there's absolutely no way we could know what the trigger is. So when we can start building in some space, we may not know what the trigger is, but when we get to this R, we have this great ability, if we can slow down, to notice what happens in body. And I usually have people give me at least three things, right? Three signs, symptoms, whatever, markers, whatever you want to call it. Emotion. Maybe there's three emotions. I usually like whatever this is to go back to the body, because there's usually whatever's going on emotionally is going to have a physical indicator, or vice versa. And then, oftentimes, there's a limiting belief. Some of those core beliefs, there's different names for them, right? Maybe we only get one or two out of those. That might be, I don't belong or something. So something gets triggered, and what would be a good example? Let's see. I've talked to a friend and they got invited to something, and that immediately is a trigger. I may not know that at the time that that's a trigger, but I'm very much aware of in my body, if I use me as an example, that I notice and immediately, like I pull away and I pull in, and my head goes down, maybe I lose my breath. And that to me is a sign that something just happened. So I get this body, and then I know, ooh, there was a trigger here. I may not know the trigger. I have the body response. Then I go back and I go, huh, that's curious, right? That's usually when that happens in my body, there's usually some trigger to that. And then I can reflect on that. Not that I need to necessarily focus on that, but it's just interesting. The next would be the emotion. So if I have that body response, I might feel sad, I might feel disappointed, maybe I'm angry, hurt. And then the limiting belief, this collective experience may be, I don't feel like I belong. And so when I know this, and this, like again, when you get into like a wide window of tolerance, when you can really have this capacity to be connected to yourself, to be connected to others, you can get there. It becomes a default. It's not like you don't have to like take this and then go to therapy for 4 years and then get this and then go there. It can happen like this. That's why that little t, big internal response, external reaction, can be close together again, but from a very healthy, integrated kind of place. When we understand this, when we can feel this, when we have that felt sense of this, we can then have this other R up here. And this is resources. And they're otherwise known as tools. And there are endless amounts. What works for some people is different than what works for other people. What works in one situation for me may not work in another situation for me. So if I were to go on with this example, what I might do is I need to maybe go for a walk. Maybe I need to sit with my dog. Maybe I need to just breathe for a little bit. Maybe I need to work out. Maybe I need to go stomp and have a little temper tantrum. Like, what brings me back down from being up here, or in some cases down here? How do I get down into the window tolerance or up into the window tolerance, right? And those are the resources. And again, the more you're aware of this, the more you're aware of tools, you know, and people always say, well, how many tools do I need to have, Deej? How many? You need to have as many tools as you need to have to get through any situation in which you are getting to the border of this window of tolerance. And that doesn't matter. Your window of tolerance can be that big, and you can still be riding up here, and what do you have to do to come back down? If you're down here, what do you have to do to come back up? So, tools. And then when we have these resources, then we can go on and have an external reaction that is appropriate for the situation, whatever that means, right? It's hard to come up with an example. Sometimes being a little angry or forceful is an appropriate reaction. The difference is, are you doing it within a window of tolerance in which you're connected to yourself, you're connected to the experience, or are you doing it in total reaction? Something happened, and now I'm going to go kick some ass. I'm into big reaction, right? Whenever we're in that state, we're not coming at it from a connected place. And then there's consequences to that, you know, and then it just continues. So this is one of my favorite nuggets to work with people on. And it's tough for a lot of people, because a lot of people, when they are triggered, want to just get out of town. I just want to get out. Come on, Deej, I need to get away for a couple of days or weeks or whatever. And then they come back, and this is not any different. It just, maybe they had 2 weeks apiece, or maybe not. What we have to do is keep working on this process. And when you can notice your body, when you can notice your emotion, when you can notice what these limiting beliefs are that are acting on you all the time, when you're not connected to them, they're still there. You know, whether I want to acknowledge I have a limiting belief that I belong or don't belong or whatever, don't belong, whether I want to hang with that or not, doesn't change the fact that it's there. So the more I can be connected to myself and the full experience of what is happening, paying attention to body first, that's always my go-to, then I can put in the right tools that I need to do in that moment. Maybe I need to call a friend. Hey, can I talk to you for a few moments? And then I can go on in the appropriate reaction. So think about it. You got questions about it, you want to talk more about it, hey, I love talking this stuff. Feel free to reach out anytime. And good to see you again. Take good care. Bye-bye.